How you doing, everybody? Breaking news on the Make the Money and Run podcast from March 11th, 2021. Well, the breaking news is we're a year to the day of Rudy Gobert's diagnosis of COVID-19 and the world shut down as far as sports-wise. Breaking news today, 1 year later, as we've improved on COVID, the Duke Blue Devils have pulled out of the ACC tournament due to a COVID test that came positive to a Tier 1 employee. I'm not sure what that means for a Tier 1 employee, but they are pulled out of the ACC tournament. Some conspiracy theorists, as we've had in the last year, we've found many say that they did that because they weren't very good this year, but we'll see what Casey Freelove has to say about that. This is the Make the Money and Run podcast for Thursday, March 11th, 2021, powered by Stables Media, sponsored by Viget. Download the Viget app on your smart devices. Use the promo code MTMAR. He is Casey Freelove, Charlie O on assignment, and I am Vasi Vadaparty. How you doing, Casey?
Doing good. I never celebrate COVID, but if there's two things in sports I hate, it's Duke basketball and the New York Yankees. So bye-bye. We won't see you first time in 24 years, and we won't miss you at all in the tournament. We won't miss you either, Michigan State. Thank you for losing me a bunch of money this morning and not showing up, falling flat against Maryland. So I'm feeling a little spicy, but very excited to talk about the madness. And there's so much going on, so much opportunity to make money during this conference tournament week. And of course, heading into March Madness, I know we have a lot of topics to discuss, so I'm happy to be here with you.
Yep, Vasi Vadaparty, Casey Freelove, the Make the Money and Run podcast will be here today and tomorrow at 4:15. Back on Monday when Charlie will join us as well as 4:15. Check out our ticker at the bottom. You can see us there. If you want to join Stables Media, join us on Facebook Live. Join us on Stables Media YouTube page as well too. Let's get the ticker going at the bottom. The NBA has started their second half, so we'll get that going as well. Not too much to talk about the NBA as they're coming off. There were two games last night, and the Washington Wizards had the 5 days off, and they still haven't figured out how to play defense. So that's something that hasn't changed yet. And then the Dallas Mavericks, Luka Doncic, had a triple-double. I think he gets up out of bed and gets a triple-double. The team around him, a little bit suspect, but, they used to say that about Tony Gwynn, right? He'd get out of bed and hit 300. I think Luka, for a lot more years, is going to just get out of bed and end up having triple doubles the rest of his career. So what a night for the Dallas Mavericks. San Antonio parted ways with LaMarcus Aldridge. All right, college basketball. Let's give you some updates on the college basketball. We're in the big boy process. I don't want to undermine the lower conferences, but these are the power conferences that we're in right now, and everybody's in their quarterfinals. 57 Division I college conference tournament games today. We don't have the research staff, so I steal some of that stuff from other networks that say that on the air. It makes us look good that we look like we're doing research. I guess doing research is kind of like stealing. So we'll just go with that. So in the Big Ten, Minnesota, Ohio State up by 12. That was a close game for a while. That was about 2 minutes ago. Oregon, my favorite pick of the day, up 19 now. They were down early in the game, but they're up 19 with 6 minutes to go. -9.5 for me. If you saw the post, check out our social media posts. I had Oregon as one of my 3 picks today. 75-56 with about 6 minutes to go. Florida come back on Vanderbilt, 67-63 in the SEC. Kansas State made it close for a while. Baylor starting to pull away with about 6 minutes to go. They're up 10 on Kansas State. Georgia Tech has come back on Miami. Miami had 2 wins in a row. Surprising wins. Maybe not so much against Pittsburgh in the opening round on Tuesday. The ACC has to start their opening rounds on Tuesday, unlike everybody else, because they got 200 teams in that conference. Everybody has to play. And, of course, Duke had the 2 games and the 2 wins. They're out as well, too. San Diego State in a tough game with the University of Wyoming. Got a big win last night. 44-42, San Diego State over Wyoming. In the Big East, Seton Hall over St. John's, 40-38. Tulane leads Tulsa. And then the lower conferences. West Virginia loses to Oklahoma State for the second game in a row. The difference is Cade Cunningham was back in this game. West Virginia was one of my picks in the morning because I thought usually it's tough to beat a team twice in a row, even on it, and this one on a neutral court. Oklahoma State and the Cowboys, maybe the hottest team in the Big 12 right now. Casey mentioned the Michigan State game. Maryland comes back from a big deficit, 68-57. The upset of the day, I don't know. There's a couple upsets here. I guess Oklahoma State could be one, but they're pretty good. Georgetown with a 72-71 victory over the Villanova Wildcats. They're going to be in the tournament, but if Georgetown ends up getting on a run, kind of like Miami did, if they lose today, then they'll be out of it. So these 11 seeds and 12 seeds, Casey, they're going to have a tough time hoping that some of these lower level teams lose. And then just a couple more scores here. Virginia got a 3-pointer at the buzzer to beat Syracuse, 72-69. Mississippi State and Kentucky. Mississippi State had a big lead in the SEC. Kentucky forgot they were playing. Mississippi State actually came back, had a lead. And then I didn't see the highlight, but I'm assuming they lost. It was 73-72 with 10 seconds left. Mississippi State with the buzzer beater. And then Duke, Florida, uncontested. And then you've got games tonight. You can check them out on the bottom. You can check them out on the ticker as well. So here we go, Casey. The ACC. Let's start out with the ACC. We talked about the Duke Blue Devils not being there. Syracuse on Wednesday. Syracuse, Miami, Duke, UNC all win. Virginia gets the buzzer beater 3 to win over Georgia Tech. Miami in progress right now, not over yet. 10-point lead. And then UNC minus 3.5, 141 versus Virginia Tech. And then Duke FSU canceled tonight. Florida State will move on tomorrow to play in the semifinal round. Semifinal round of the ACC tournament. What's your take on what you saw this morning from the ACC standpoint?
Well, Virginia, needed that buzzer beater, and they're a competent team. 18 wins on the season. I think they're one to keep an eye on. I'm a little puzzled by the North Carolina minus 3.5. That's obviously the front of the jersey and public perception because, you've been on Virginia Tech all year. They're 15-5. They've got a better record both in conference and overall. So I guess maybe it's just the fact that they're in Greensboro gives Carolina a little advantage. I don't even know if there are fans in the stands, but that helps a little bit. The Hokies are a good team, though, and Florida State's got to be feeling the best out of all this, Vasu. They get a bye. They don't have to play Duke today. They can rest another day. Probably end up playing Georgia Tech, I guess, if things hold right now with their lead against Miami. And Florida State's in line for a very high seed in the NCAA tournament. So I think they've got to be feeling confident. Not that Virginia shouldn't either, because if they're able to claw their way to the title game and get a victory, they're probably sitting on a high seed line as well. I guess my question to you, are we giving the ACC champion a number 2 seed just because it's the ACC, or because it's a wonky year, do you think they might drop down to the 3 line there?
They might even drop down to the 4 line because you've got the Big 12 teams that are there. The ACC has not played well this year. We know that. The Big East, Connecticut can move up to a 3 line because we'll get to the Big East in a second. Connecticut could be up there as well, too, with Villanova losing. And this Georgetown team, like I said, could scare some of those 10, 11, 12 seeds in terms of teams that are hoping for Selection Sunday name calling on Sunday. But a team like Georgetown could take one of those spots away. So we'll get to that in a second. But the ACC, I'm interested to see how Virginia does tomorrow because I think I don't want to say they took anybody lightly. Their offense hasn't been as good this year, and they came back on Syracuse. Syracuse had a dominant win over North Carolina State yesterday, and they lose on that buzzer beater today. I didn't even see who saw it. I didn't get a chance to see any of the game. Just looking at the scores. Miami making a comeback on Georgia Tech right now, 66-60, with about 2 minutes to go in the other ACC game, and then of course North Carolina. They are in North Carolina, so there will be fans in the stands, and they will have some home court advantage. So it's going to be an interesting, like I said, 57 conference tournament games today, and this will determine a lot of the seeding process here. And Florida State is happy that they get the day off as well too. Let's go to the Big East. We talked about the Big East a little bit. Villanova loses to Georgetown 72-71. Georgetown, and the most interesting stat, it's not even really, it has a lot to do with the game. But the most interesting stat for Georgetown, and they are not a good free throw shooting team today. I don't know if you saw it, Casey, 23 of 23 from the free throw line today for Georgetown. And that's a team that shoots about 71% through the year. And here they are. Obviously, they needed every point. They had a big lead on Villanova. We talked about it last week when Cole Gillespie went out, their leading scorer. Over the weekend, they lost to Providence, and then they lost their second leading scorer, James Earl Robinson. I thought this might have an impact on the Big East. This might be a boon. You never want anybody to get injured, but this might be a boon for Connecticut, who's a 12-point favorite over DePaul tonight, 133.5. And then you look at the wins on Wednesday. Georgetown, Butler, DePaul, 3 upsets. 3 upsets yesterday, all underdogs. Georgetown was an underdog to Marquette. Butler, a big underdog to Xavier, who had a tough time starting and stopping this year. They were one of the teams affected by COVID a lot. And then DePaul got their victory over Providence, who was pretty good. Providence was not good as a favorite this year, and it cost them yesterday a little bit as well, too. Now at Seton Hall and St. John's in progress. I just gave that score out. Seton Hall, they just played on Saturday. Seton Hall got out to an 18-0 lead on Saturday. St. John's came back and beat them 81-71 on Saturday. We talked about it on Monday. Well, they played again. I'm sure that St. John's realized that they couldn't get off to that slow of a start. And Seton Hall did not take the gas off the pedal today with about 12 minutes to go. They're at 46-40. So let's talk a little Big East. This has to bode well for Connecticut because they're the best defensive team in the conference right now, Casey.
Right, and they're playing a DePaul team that's 5-13 today, coming off their upset win. So I think that point spread's good. And in fact, we'll talk about that when we get to plays a little bit later. The number that jumps out to me is Butler getting 10 after that performance against Xavier. I know our friend Ken Sterling there in Indianapolis always kind of handicaps the Indiana teams for us, and Butler is a team he said could be dangerous at the Garden, and why not them? I mean, they're 10-14, but they didn't play like that yesterday. I'm surprised yet not shocked by Georgetown's win. Georgetown's not very good. They're one game under 500 on the season, 7-9 in conference. But Villanova, we talked about losing Gillespie. That is just something that's very difficult to rebound from when you've played, prior to that, 21 games with the guy on your lineup. So I think Jay Wright's gonna have to do a great coaching job. By the way, congratulations to Jay Wright for being nominated as a Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame finalist, and he will be deserving to head in whenever he is enshrined. He's done a magnificent job with Villanova, but I agree with what you were saying about UConn. I mean, right now we're looking at a 3-bid league. You've got Villanova's going to get one, Creighton and UConn, regardless of what happens. St. John's intriguing. They're 16-10, 10-9 in the conference, but trailing Seton Hall right now. So I guess that game certainly matters for the Johnnies if they're going to try and get 4 bids out of this league. And all in all, I mean, you can't get any better than at the Garden, whether there's fans there or not. It's probably one of my favorite venues in all of sports. Not like I'm going out on a limb by saying that, but I have memories of Jim Calhoun's UConn teams past and how well they performed there. And maybe they're channeling a little bit about that. And the funny thing is, Connecticut's the least talked about best program of all time as far as the Mount Rushmore programs. I mean, they've won so many titles, including as recently as 2014. I know Kevin Ollie struggled as their coach before they brought in Hurley, but a great hire there. And probably a guy I could see staying for a long time in that exact spot, because that is a glamour job, in my opinion. I think it's a Cadillac program. So I think you're right. Connecticut's playing for a higher seed in the tournament. They could make some noise, and they're one of those teams that if you're feeling a little feisty, I mean, why not throw a few bucks on them? I'll have to look up the future number while we're talking, but I can assure you it's very high. And when we talk about the Big 12, I'll tell you about another team you damn well better be putting some money on. They picked up a victory earlier today, and they are red hot looking to make a deep run. By the way, Connecticut right now, 55-1, Vasu. Tell me that's not worth $2, $3, $4, $5.
No, I mean $2, $3, $4, $500 for crying out loud. Let's just go big right now. That's the obviously we're leaning towards them to win the Big East Conference, and that's going to be a boon for them. And their seed will end up being higher than what they thought. They had struggled at the beginning of the year, but the last 3 weeks, that defense and Danny Hurley. I mean, if we're going to see one Hurley, I'd rather see Danny Hurley into the NCAA. Only because I have Oregon tonight -9, 84-68 in that game with 2:11 to go in the second half. If you have the Pac-12 network in your office over there, maybe you want to keep me updated, because we have yet to get it on DirecTV. That will be my bone all through the tournament. I just wanted to throw that out there for the last dig. I don't want to dig at Larry Scott. He's a good guy, but you could have helped us the last few years in terms of not only people covering the Pac-12, but also having the channel as well too. All right, so if we move on, the Big East is very interesting. Let's move on to the Big Ten. A little interesting scenario happened yesterday. Minnesota was an underdog. They did win. Penn State barely did not cover against Nebraska. 2 games yesterday. Minnesota Northwestern. I mean, that was brick central yesterday watching that game. Minnesota Northwestern. Northwestern a 1-point favorite, 139.5 the total in that game. There was no way they were going to get to that total. 51-46 with 2.5 minutes to go. And I think the game ended up with like 53-49 or something. So they got nothing at the end there. And then we mentioned today, Michigan State had a big lead. That when I checked the score this morning, it was 23-11. Michigan State, and it looked good. Last night, the overnight line had Michigan State -1 and -104. And then when the money lines came back and the money came out, I think that might have been an adjusted line. But 68-57, I know Casey wanted it as the underdog. I wouldn't have mattered, Casey. I'm sorry to tell you, it wouldn't have mattered a +2 for Michigan State. And then Rutgers, -2.5, 130.5 versus Indiana. Ohio State, Minnesota in progress. In fact, it's a 1-point game with 8 seconds to go. Can't do play-by-play for legal reasons, but Ohio State has a timeout after Marcus Carr just hit a 3, 75-74 Ohio State. We could be looking at an upset there if Ohio State doesn't do what Washington did yesterday and not hold on to the ball and lose that game at the end in the last 48 seconds. So a 1-point game for Ohio State over Minnesota. Tonight, Wisconsin 5 versus Penn State, 134.5. Wisconsin's offense has struggled quite a bit. And then you've got the double byes Friday. Michigan will play Maryland tomorrow, so that's set up. And then Purdue, Illinois, and Iowa will get the rest of the 3 games that are going on today. Talk about the Big Ten a little bit, Casey. They in the Big 12 they and the Big 12 have been the two best conferences this year, but the bottom half of the conference has struggled for the Big 10 coming in to the series, and one of these teams is going to have to run in order for these double byes to feel a little pressure going into the weekend.
Yeah, well said. We'll see how this Ohio State final shakes out. They're up by 1, as you mentioned, with 8 seconds left, but I think Illinois set up pretty well. They're going to be a very high seed, and they may even end up being right there behind Gonzaga, depending on how Baylor performs in the Big 12. I'm buying on Illinois. I know that the sports books, I was reading a little on the Action Network yesterday about how their two biggest liabilities as far as future bets are the Illini and the Gonzaga Bulldogs as far as public money. And that makes sense. Anybody that's watched Illinois play the last few weeks knows that they're peaking at the right time, and they've got to feel very confident. Now, I'm not going to just completely throw Michigan and Iowa out of the chances to win it either, because Iowa, when you retire a guy's jersey, you probably should win some hardware if you're going to be able to do that. So Garza and company might be feeling some pressure. And I think that Ohio State, who looks like they're going to hang on, they're up 3 now, is still in position to maybe get to that championship game as well. And it's all about playing seeding. I mean, if you buy what Joe Lunardi's selling, it sounds like the Big Ten probably could have 2 number 1 seeds, if not high 2 seeds. And that seems to be accurate positioning. Now, depending on what happens in the Big 12, as far as the higher ranked teams and whether or not they'll be up there, it's starting to feel like the Big 10 versus Big 12 invitational challenge in Indiana, as far as looking at, teams that we think are going to have the ability to go far. And they've done nothing to undersell that. I am surprised, by the way, just a quick note, I did lose on Michigan State. Look, that's a stalwart bet for me. That bet is won for me literally probably 6 out of the last 7 years, Michigan State in the first round. They were down by 4 points at half and just didn't show up in the second half. And I guess that's what we're seeing this year, some big-time programs that aren't going to be there. And I'm quite okay with that. I have no problem with some of these smaller teams stepping up. For example, not to digress away from the Big Ten, but I was watching Colgate yesterday, and for whatever reason, they get 3 days off before their championship game on Sunday. That's a good team. That's a team that has a legitimate big man down low who can play, and they're going to be very difficult for a team in the tournament. In fact, I'll mark down the time on this, so when we're talking in 2 weeks, I can look like a genius when they're sitting there in the Sweet 16. I kid. But getting back to
don't underestimate yourself. You're a genius, Casey. Don't underestimate yourself. You're a genius.
Indiana and Rutgers have a lot to play for. I'm kidding. Indiana's done, but Rutgers is 14-10, 10-10 in conference. And if this conference is going to get respect and maybe get the 7 teams they're projected to, Rutgers has to play their part. I'd expect a good effort out of Wisconsin tonight. I think that line's solid at 5.5. And then it looks like, as I mentioned, Ohio State may be able to hang on. We'll probably continue to digest this as we move through the rest of the Big Ten here. But I mean, look, it's a solid conference. I think they've got a bunch of Final Four contenders. And right now, if I have to pick one team that I like the best, I'm going to go with the Illini. And that's just due to the eye test of watching them.
Power 5 conferences, the Power 5 conferences, the American Conference, as well as the Big East, will have all their championship conference tournament championship games on Saturday. So we'll be able to digest a little bit more today from the quarterfinals into the conference semifinals. And then, of course, championship Saturday, we'll probably do some videos. I talked to Charlie today. He's off. He's off on assignment today, but we'll probably do some videos and preview the championship Saturday, one of the best days in college basketball, championship Saturday. I actually enjoy these, speaking of digression, I actually enjoy these conference championships, conference tournaments somewhat better than I do the NCAA tournament, because these are teams that played each other, and these teams, and sometimes the third time playing against each other. They talk about it in the NFL in the wild card scenarios. When you play a team 3 times, it's hard to beat them. So it'll be interesting to see, and I'm looking forward to see who these semifinal matchups are tomorrow in these Power 5 conferences. All right, Bossy Battle Party, Casey Freelove here. This is the Make the Money and Run podcast for March 11th, 2021. We're powered by Stables Media. Check out Stables Media at stablesmedia.com. And don't forget to hit our sponsor, Bigot. Use the promo code MTMAR. 57 conference tournament games today, and we're hitting all the big ones right now. By the way, Oregon just covered for me. They ended up winning by 18, 91-73. We'll talk about that in the Pac-12. They are red hot right now, considering how awful they started at the beginning of the year. Let's hit not the Big East, let's hit the Big 12. We already had the Big East up there. The Big 12, Kansas is a 5-point lead with 8 seconds to go. I'm sorry, Baylor, 73-68 over Kansas State. Kansas State with a big upset victory. I actually like them over TCU yesterday, but they're going to lose. And then Oklahoma had a 15-point lead, 16-point lead. And then Iowa State, who played well in the second half, came back and made a game of it. But Oklahoma's there. Now they're going to play Kansas. There'll be the Baylor, Kansas State's in the next one. and then Oklahoma, Kansas later. Kansas minus 2.5, 135, Casey. And the reason that line probably not higher because Oklahoma struggled the last few weeks, including that sweep on a Saturday, Monday versus Oklahoma State, is because Kansas is not going to have their center. David McCormick is out for the entire tournament because of COVID-related issues. I don't know if it's health and safety protocol or if he did contract it. I did not read to see where that was. But he's out, and that's a big part of their offense because they don't shoot the ball well. And Oklahoma, if they come out and shoot the ball really well, this is a really good underdog pick, I think. We'll get to the picks later, but I think this is a really good underdog pick for Oklahoma because they're not in Fog Allen Fieldhouse today. They're in Kansas City playing that tournament on a neutral court, and I give Oklahoma a more than fair shot to take care of that game. And then, of course, you got Texas Tech at minus 1.5, 134 is the total versus Texas. When Texas is an underdog, I'm talking about Austin. When University of Texas is an underdog, they are nearly undefeated as an underdog. And to put Texas Tech as a favorite, we've watched the Big 12 all year. I'm kind of interested in your take in that. Well, actually, I'm really interested in your take, but I'm kind of interested in what you think in terms of what they were thinking. The odds makers were putting Texas Tech as a favorite, Casey.
Yeah, I see a lot of public money jumping on Texas, and it's a good question. I mean, I guess it's just based on the fact that they've got, actually, it's two good coaches, so it's kind of split the difference there. Maybe just a result of their last 10. I find that line very interesting. And make sure you're shopping around if you're betting these games because I've got Oklahoma at 3.5 at both William Hill and DraftKings. You can get yourself an extra point there, not have to worry so much about the juice. But as far as this Texas Tech and Texas game, it's great. It's a great matchup. Definitely looking forward to it. I'm just as much looking forward to Oklahoma and Kansas. And I want to talk a little bit about Oklahoma State, who I've been talking about nonstop for 2 weeks. I mean, Cade Cunningham back, 17 points, 8 boards, 4 assists. They edged West Virginia. And as we talk about the Big 12 here, Vasu, when I throw it back to you, I got to get your thoughts on the Mountaineers, who are struggling more than any top 10 team here over the last 2 weeks. And you want to be playing better basketball heading in. I think the Cowboys are potentially a team that can make it all the way to the championship game if Cunningham's ankle's okay. Because Avery Anderson showed that he's got a little something for him, and they're surging right now. And I love a team that's surging. They were down by 6 at half, outscored them 42-33. Did OK State over West Virginia in the second half, and I really like that team tonight. I think Oklahoma's in a great position because of the points you just laid out. I think that Austin Reeves is a leader, and I think they got their bad basketball out of them last week when they lost twice to the Cowboys. So I think Oklahoma's a live dog, and I won't be shocked if they win that game. Kansas is probably a 3 or a 4 seed regardless of what they do. So we'll see what the effort is. And when you run your offense through one guy like that and then he's not available, that certainly hurts a little bit. So a lot of great basketball tonight in the Big 12. And again, I pose the question to you, what do we make of West Virginia when the bracket gets released? Because they're probably going to be a favorite. They'll be the higher seed, but they're not playing very good right now.
They're not playing very good, and you know what? They had the tough game against Oklahoma State without Cade Cunningham last week. Oklahoma State's confidence has got to be growing because look at what they did without Cade Cunningham on Saturday, and now they brought him back, and actually Oklahoma State was down by 6-7 points in the game. You had just mentioned it, and then they came back and won the game today. I'm kind of interested to see because there's a side story here that goes with West Virginia. Bob Huggins is trying to get his 900th win. And there was a little bit of pressure on Saturday. They were already in, and they were locked into their seed coming into the tournament. And now this was a golden opportunity for him to get that out of the way going into a tournament semifinal game, potential tournament semifinal game, which West Virginia will not be in. And now they're all headed to Indianapolis. They have not played well. The biggest problem for West Virginia right now that I've seen in the last 3 weeks, and you and I watch everything. That's why we drop knowledge on this podcast. We watch everything. But West Virginia's defense has been AWOL the last 2.5 weeks. Look at the totals. Look at the over-unders. Ordinarily, that's not a Bob Huggins team. That's not a Bob Huggins defensive team. And I'm not saying you got to go back to the Cincinnati days where they're throwing up bricks and holding teams 50 points, but they're giving up points left and right, and they're not running back on defense. Fran Fraschilla made that comment on ESPN on Saturday or ABC, wherever they were on Saturday, that said that there were 3 guys in the backcourt while Oklahoma State was running down the side. And Oklahoma State's confidence, we talked about this on Monday, and I'm going to reiterate that again for those that missed. You can download and subscribe, by the way, on any of the podcasts if you missed any of our live broadcasts. Oklahoma State can shoot the ball, and if they shoot the ball, they only drew more confidence from Saturday not having Cade Cunningham there. And they shot, it looks like, I don't have the box score in front of me because I got the scoreboard. And I don't have a TV behind me, so I'm really upset about that. But the fact is that they've got the confidence to shoot the ball, that they don't need to rely on Cade Cunningham going 1-on-5 in their offensive sets. And Mike Boynton has done a terrific job at Oklahoma State. And I think they just got off to a lousy start because they were all trying to get adjusted to each other. But he's got Player of the Year, one of the Player of the Year candidates, and he's got guys that can shoot on that team. And I look for them to maybe potentially get into the championship game, especially for the reasons that we talked about, that Kansas may not be there. Texas Tech, I don't know if they can shoot well enough to get into the championship game. And Baylor, by the way, got their victory 74-68 over Kansas State. So maybe they got their tough game in this tournament. And then a Baylor-Oklahoma State game would not be a bad game for championship Saturday, Casey.
Yeah, we take it. We know what Baylor's capable of. They've been a pick for me on and off to win the whole thing. It's just I was worried about the rust factor, and clearly, by winning games and getting more games in, they're going to be more confident. They're probably right now looking at the third number one seed overall, because it's probably going to go Gonzaga and then Illinois if they win the Big Ten. I mean, you could flip-flop those, but either way, they're going to be in a great position. They've got a good coach. They've been building towards this for so long. And they've got so many different guys that are difficult to guard. They can also play defense in stretches when it matters. So I'm nothing but excited about Baylor's prospects. And that would definitely be my ideal Big 12 title game. If we can get them and OK State together, I have to look at the bracket, see how that would bear out. But the Big 12 is locked. It's loaded. It's going to have a bunch of teams playing on the second weekend. And they might even be a team that we're not talking about, like those Red Raiders or those Longhorns or even West Virginia. I mean, how cool for Hug to get his 900th win in the tournament. That'd be kind of cool. I mean,
he's got the opportunity because they haven't played well the last two games. I'm sure he wanted that out of the way before they got to the tournament, but we'll see where they are for that. Just to reflect back on the Big Ten a little bit, a Michigan-Illinois game, round 3 would not be bad for Saturday or for Sunday as well, too, in terms of their Big Ten Conference Championship as well. But let's move on to a tournament, conference tournament, the SEC, in terms of the way they played this year. It hasn't been very good. But they still have a chance to get some quality teams in there. Arkansas has probably played the best in the last few weeks. Alabama's defense is really good. Herbert Jones was named Player of the Year, 4th leading scorer on Alabama's team, but still voted Player of the Year because coaches and writers saw how valuable he was on the defensive side. Wednesday, Vanderbilt beat Texas A&M 79-68 as a 1-point favorite. I thought Texas A&M, after their game over the weekend, probably had a chance to get back at them. Kentucky was down big today to Mississippi State. They beat them by 30 over the weekend. They realized it was Mississippi State, came all the way back to take a lead, and then got beat at the buzzer, as we said. But tonight, Missouri, 6.5. Can't figure them out. We talked about that a lot. Georgia, 332nd in the nation in turnovers this year. They haven't played well. 153.5 is the total. Mississippi, 7, 140.5 over South Carolina. Florida and Vanderbilt in progress. In fact, that game went final, 69-63. Vanderbilt loses to Florida, so Vanderbilt is out. Florida did not cover their 7.5 in that game. And then the Arkansas, Tennessee, LSU all have the double bye. They'll play Friday, and they'll set up the same scenario that the Big Ten has because they have their championship game on Sunday as well, too. This is your conference, Casey Freelove. Talk a little SEC. How dangerous are they going to be, and who? I know Alabama and Arkansas are the two dangerous teams, but how dangerous can they be once they get into tournament mode?
Well, there's a lot of storylines. I think the biggest one, if you're looking to watch games today, is that Missouri is at 15-8, 8-8 in conference. And if you're looking to get 7 bids from this league, which seems a little extreme considering the average play they've had all year, Mizzou's got to make a win today and probably pick up a victory tomorrow as well. It's a top-heavy conference, as we've talked about throughout the course of the season. I think Alabama and Arkansas are both going to be dangerous once we get into the tournament. And then it all depends on, how these teams play tomorrow. LSU is a bit of a conundrum. They've looked great. They've looked terrible. Tennessee's more on the terrible end as of late, but 17-7. They've got themselves an early game tomorrow. And I think that really the only intrigue in the conference is Missouri, because I've got 6 in. I'm giving Ole Miss the nod with a 10-8 record in conference. I think they'll take care of South Carolina. Wouldn't touch that game, by the way. That number's a little high for my taste at 7.5. But I think the Rebels will move on, secure that 6th bid for the league. And then once they get into the tournament, anything can happen. Look, Florida is not playing great. They only beat Vandy by 6, but they're a competent program year in and year out. And I think that the SEC is not going to make a whole lot of noise, but you could make the case that they could have a team in the Elite 8. And the thing about Alabama is, even this guy who supports Alabama football like nobody's business doesn't know that much about them. I mean, I know about Petty. I know about Oates, the coach, but they haven't been on national television as much as a 21 win team typically would in years past. So I think we're on a collision course for Alabama and Arkansas to meet each other in the championship game. The rest of the herd will thin out. And I want to see how Missouri and Tennessee play, because Tennessee to me is feeling like a one and done once we actually get to March Madness. And this has not been a great year for this conference. Now, the good thing is they don't have to travel as far once they get to Indiana. I mean, the South is, due south, if I can use a geography lesson here. So it's not like they have to travel all the way out to the West Coast or anything to play the game. So maybe that'll give them a little bit of comfort. But all in all, it's not a great year for this league. And I think that Alabama will somehow avenge their last loss to Arkansas and capture not only the regular season title, but the conference championship, earn themselves a number 2 seed, a high 2 seed at that, which is deserving of a number 6 ranked program. So today, as far as watchability, Tennessee and Missouri, you are in focus as far as whether or not we think you deserve to be in the dance. I know Tennessee's already in, and then whether Mizzou can claw their way in.
Vasu Vatapalli, Casey Freelove. This is the Make the Money and Run podcast for Thursday, March 11th, 2021. 1 year to the day when sports shut down. I was in Vegas last year, the No Pac-12 tournament. Half of the Big East game got through. I saw Tim Brando be interviewed yesterday. I think he and Nick Dye, I forgot who the analyst was, but they were the last ones to call a basketball game last year when they got shut down at halftime in the Big East. So we've made progress in the year, and here we are. Duke out of the ACC tournament, so we're not completely there yet. So everybody stay safe and healthy, and we'll get through this year. And hopefully by next year, we'll be back to normal where there'll be crowds and everything. Coming up, I just wanted to throw that out there. We'll talk about it at the end a little bit because what a year we've had. Coming up at 5 Eastern and 5:30, and the next set of games for those that want to wager. Ryder and St. Peter's, the MAC Championships quarterfinals are going right there. Cal State Bakersfield and UC Davis up near Casey's area. Big West Conference quarterfinal. Oregon State, UCLA will be game 2 of the Pac-12 tournament. UCLA a 5.5-point favorite. They're struggling right now. We'll get to the Pac-12 in a second. And then in the Mountain West, which we'll talk about next, Nevada, Boise State. Boise State, a 4.5-point favorite. That's going to be an interesting conference as we switch over to the Mountain West. Lots of Nevada party Casey Freelove here. Mountain West games today. Boise State 4.5 over the Nevada Reno Ball Club, who's played pretty well. Wyoming, San Diego State in progress. In fact, Wyoming's given them a game with 4 minutes to go. San Diego State only has a 1-point lead on Wyoming, 3:56 to go in the second half. Wyoming had a big game last night. They won on Wednesday. Actually, who did they play on Wednesday? I forgot who they played on Wednesday. They ended up having a good win, and they were there. And then you've got UNLV, who had a big win last night. Colorado State versus Fresno State. Colorado State 8.5, 137 the total. UNLV is going to play Utah State. Utah State 10, 136.5. Look, the Mountain West, we don't spend a lot of time with the Mountain West. I get it. Utah State, Colorado State, and Boise State are the 3 best teams. Utah State, according to everybody's bracketology, is in the first 4 out. Colorado State has made their way in with wins over Utah State. I think that's the tiebreaker that everybody's looking at. And then Boise State swept Utah State early in the year. So you're up in that area. You're a UNLV alum. You know the conference a little bit. Utah State, Colorado State, Boise State, the 3 teams that are going to get in. You think there'll be 3 that gets in, even if none of them make it to the championship game, because these 10, 11, 12 seeds that are going to be getting in at large bids are going to be a little worried if Boise State or Colorado State end up losing out, and then you got to rely on Utah State to get into the tournament, and then 1 or 2 teams gets in, Casey.
Yeah, it's kind of a thin the herd, and we didn't even mention San Diego State. I mean, they're in for sure as the regular season champion with 20 wins, although they're tied with Wyoming here with 4 minutes left in the second half, which isn't a good sign. I think Utah State, 18-7 overall, 15-4. They will eliminate my alma mater today. I don't know about by 10, but they'll move on. Colorado State, they passed the eye test. I've watched them a few times, and I want to make a case for this being a 4-bid league, depending on what Boise's able to do against Nevada, who's always a Mountain West conference tournament stalwart as well. They're not the easiest team that you want to face, but Boise is laying 4.5. I think once the dust settles, it'll probably end up being a 3-bid league as far as teams that can compete in the bracket. I think Colorado State and San Diego State come top of mind. I'm a little surprised Utah State did as well as they did this year. They were a senior-laden class that beat San Diego State in the conference tournament last year, right before society shut down. So the Aggies have overachieved a little bit. And now as Wyoming takes a 1-point lead, this is why they call it the madness of March here, with the 19th ranked team in the country perhaps having a chance to lose the game. So 3-bid league. And, I don't really foresee an Elite Eight or Final Four contender coming out of here. But all in all, a decent season for the conference.
San Diego State, Utah State, Colorado State, Boise State. I should mention that. By the way, San Diego State came into the game as a 15.5-point favorite. So if Wyoming pulls the upset on, that's going to make another number 10, number 11, number 12 seed worried if they happen to get to Saturday in that championship game and end up winning. Those that remember Steve Alford's Iowa team from 20 years ago that won 5 straight days that knocked out a bunch of 11 and 12 seeds in that year. I think that was the year of 2000. So Wyoming, a 1-point lead on San Diego State. The last one we'll hit before we hit the Pac-12 is the American Athletic Conference. We know this is a Houston, Memphis, Wichita State conference from the standpoint of Houston being a top 10 team. Memphis gave them a tough game the other night in the last conference game over the weekend. And then Wichita State, the only team to beat them in conference play. Casey had that game. I will never forget when he took Wichita State that day as a 3.5-point underdog against Houston, even though Wichita State was at home. But here we are. We're looking at 3 bids in this conference, or is somebody going to play themselves out? South Florida won last night over Temple. Tulane and Tulsa in progress, unless those guys go on a run. UCF has ECU tonight, and then the buys. It's only a three-day conference tournament for the AAC. But here we are, real quickly, Casey. Wichita State, Houston, Memphis. What are we looking at? 2 teams, 3 teams? I think Memphis has played themselves in. Houston definitely is in. And then Wichita State and Memphis are probably end up having to play themselves in unless one of them's already in. I haven't looked at bracketology to see if anybody's considerably in or not, or worried about being first 4 out or last 4 in.
Yeah, Wichita's in, Houston's in. I think Memphis is probably, depending on which bracket you look at, whether you go with Lenardi or with CBS Sports, they're right there on that.
Don't forget my guy DeCourcy from Fox Sports. We got to include the Fox Sports guys.
Absolutely. We'll go to foxsports.com, and DeCourcy, he knows what he's talking about too. Hey, we all think we know what we're talking about this time of year. It'll matter who ends up getting the right 64 or 68, I should say, that get in. I don't know. Memphis is a conundrum. I think based on brand and based on their coach, you'd like to have him in there. People love Penny Hardaway. I think he's done a pretty good job recruiting. Don't forget, one of his players from last year is doing decently for the Warriors when he's been healthy this year, Mr. Weissman. But I think it might end up being a 2-bid league if Memphis ends up getting upset. I like Houston. I like Wichita State. Houston's another one of those outliers we were talking about. If you want to get in and get some future money in on them, why not? I mean, they're right now actually looking at the movement today. They've moved up to the 5th choice on the board at 18-1, along with Iowa and Ohio State. That is a little bit interesting, and I think it shows that the Cougars are a competent team. Not a conference you and I watch on the reg, but I think that they do have a decent shot of having one team, that is Houston, going deep. And nobody wants to see Wichita State in the tournament. Look at the damage they've done in years past. They've sent guys to the NBA. But if I had to call my shot right now, I'll say that Memphis ends up getting in. Now, of course, all contingent on higher seeds in lower conferences winning their conferences.
By the way, Tulane leads Tulsa 74-70. Tulsa was favored in that game with 24 seconds left. So Tulane making a move today to get in there against, I don't know who they play tomorrow, but we'll have it all tomorrow. Then St. John's is down 59-55 to Seton Hall in the Big East with 3:28 to go. And then Wyoming sticking with San Diego State, 15-point underdog, tied at 64 with 1:30 to go. That the Mountain West quarterfinal. All right, the last college conference we'll go to. We just talked about Oregon with a big win, 91-73 over Arizona State. Arizona State beat Washington yesterday. We'll hit the Pac-12 button right here. Arizona State got the victory. Washington really blew that game. They had 4 turnovers in the last minute with a 1-point lead, and then Kyle Smith, the coach, gets a technical foul to not even keep their team in with a chance to even tie it with a miraculous 3-pointer. That I bring up, not that it has any bearing on the tournament, but because I had Washington +1. So that's the only reason I bring it up. But let's move on. It's 24 hours later. Utah got a close win against Washington yesterday. Neither of those teams are going to go in, but Utah did have a big lead. And then Cal Stanford, the big game basketball version, did not see Stanford going this way last night because we knew they started off well. Then their last game against USC, they got beat out by 35, and then Cal ends up getting a victory in Las Vegas. They rolled I haven't played craps in a while. I guess they rolled all 7s and 11s, and Stanford rolled all 2 3s and 12s in the craps game and crapped out, and they are out in the first round. A surprising win for Cal today. UCLA, as we said, coming up in about a half an hour, 5 and 133. USC 7.5, 139.5. tonight, and then Colorado 13.5 and 133. USC has Utah, UCLA has Oregon State, and then Colorado has Cal tonight, and Oregon ASU in progress. Actually went final. We already said 91-73. All right, quick takes on the Pac-12, Casey, as we get close to wrap up here.
Disrespected and underrated a little bit, in my opinion. I mean, I think that Oregon, I'm looking at the future board. Oregon and USC are still 55-1 to win March Madness. I'm not saying they're going to, but my goodness. And UCLA's at like 60-1 to win it. I think it's a 4-bid league. I think Colorado will destroy Cal tonight. I have no idea how Cal beats Stanford. Stanford, when we look back on this season, one of the most disappointing teams in the country, in my opinion, finishing at 14-13 overall. But look, Oregon's surging. USC has the best player in the conference. I think they're headed on a collision course towards the final. I will put in a caveat, though, because you've been big on the Buffaloes, and Colorado's playing some good basketball at the right time as well. They're on a 4-game win streak. In fact, the top of the conference, all playing well. Oregon, 6-game win streak. USC, 2-game win streak. And then Colorado on the 4-game win streak. The biggest point of intrigue probably between both of us is this UCLA team that's found a way to lose 3 straight. We definitely had them in, and I think they're still in. It's a 4-bid league, in my opinion. But I'd be curious to see what the Bruins are able to do tonight and how they're able to kind of navigate the tournament.
UCLA has struggled the last few weeks. They had that game-losing three-pointer against USC last week, and they've lost 3 out of 4. I think they still have to play well to get themselves in. It's a 3-bid league probably. Oregon's been the hottest team the last 2 weeks. They started off slow, had the COVID issues, and they've won. They've won and won big, obviously winning by 18 today for me. USC will get in as well too. They are the best team defensively in the conference. In an Oregon USC game, USC did thump them by 17 in the Galen Center a few weeks ago. And then of course Colorado, they play well at home, and I'll be interested to see how they play today on the road. It is a neutral site game in the T-Mobile Center in Las Vegas, where the Golden Knights play. So I'll be interested to see how. I don't think Cal will give them a big test, but I'll be interested to see how Colorado plays in the next 2 days if they get by to be able to take on USC or Oregon or UCLA if it comes down to it at that point. So Pac-12 very quickly on that roll, and we'll just see how it goes in terms of that. All right, before we get to picks here, don't forget to join us tomorrow, 4:15, 1:15 Pacific. We'll have the semifinals and the quarterfinals of the Big Ten and the SEC, the semifinal games of the other 3 power conferences. And, of course, you talked about time off in between games. The Atlantic 10 has a week off as well, too. St. Bonaventure, I forget who they're playing, but they're playing on Sunday as well in the A-10 conference. They'll be the early game on CBS because CBS will have the whole package on Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, and Sunday late afternoon for the right before Selection Sunday show. All right, I just want to take a minute here real quick, Casey. This is the year anniversary of what happened last year for Rudy Gobert. I just wanted to get your quick thought here as we wrap up the show before we get to picks here, because ultimately it is about picks. But what a year it's been, what a year we've come back from, what a year the country has had in terms of how we've dealt with it and how we've come back with it. I still see hope, positivity coming through in the outlier crowds that have really dissipated or gone against science and the way the progress has been. Just tells me it's like a trade. You know what? I thought about this, and I wanted to say this correctly. You know how people get on the air and talk at talk shows and they say, oh, well, let's make this trade and this trade, but it makes no sense. I want some reasonability. People that are outliers that go against science and go against factual data, to me, that seems like the fan that just wants to trade your 53rd player on the roster for Russell Wilson, quarterback, and it's not going to happen. It's not reasonable. So I'm going to give you a minute here to talk about that, and then I'll kind of touch up on what I said, but just kind of want to reflect on what a year it's been for us doing our show, trying to come up with content. Boy, we're really good. We did a show without games, by the way, too.
For months.
For months. Go ahead, Casey.
Yeah, I was at the last Sacramento Kings game. They were taking on, at the time, the defending champion Raptors on March 8th at Golden 1. And really, I'd started hearing about COVID, but we had no idea what was to come. Of course, Charlie O, our co-host, shared a memory yesterday as to that being the 1-year anniversary of the Kings supposed to take on the Pelicans and Zion Williamson, and they called the game off right before. Look, I work as a sports director at my radio station. This has completely disrupted my life. It's made handicapping much more difficult. And of course, I don't know anybody that I would call a close personal friend that has lost someone, but I can say that my mom has lost a friend or two, and I know some other people that have been affected gravely. My girlfriend's cousin was in the hospital for 4 days and on a respirator for that time. So it's never been a joke in my mind. I've done my best to stay home outside of a couple of trips up to Reno because I am a gambling addict, not afraid to admit that here on the show. But look, all in all, compared to where we were last year, and I think about some of the hope and just desperation I felt heading into the fall and winter. I mean, just a few months ago, as to, oh my gosh, am I going to get this? Will I get the flu? Is that going to be confused? Who else do I know that's going to end up getting sick? And I think, we're not a country that's ever going to come together again. We're definitely divided down two-party lines, which is kind of ridiculous in the middle of a public health crisis. But I feel like enough people have enough sense to know that, look, it's not over yet, but we can see the finish line. And that's evidenced across the country. We're sitting here in the state of California, the most locked down state that there's been in the union. We're seeing hope. April 1st, fans could return to Major League Baseball games. I'm actually going to be calling a high school football game tomorrow night for my radio station. I'm very excited about that because these kids only get one senior year. So signs of things starting to come back are good. Doesn't mean we can throw everything out the door. We can't throw our masks out and just pretend that this doesn't exist anymore. But you can definitely feel momentum shift. You and I always talk about momentum, especially in college basketball games, that second half shift when one team just kicks it into overdrive. And I feel like America is on track for that. And I really am hoping that, the trauma we've all been through, because if you're watching this show, if you've ever listened to this show, or if you're on this show, you've been through some mental trauma that you probably didn't expect to see in your life. And I think we're coming through stronger for it. I feel optimistic about 2021 moving forward. And as far as from a show perspective, hey, we're doing all right, man. We've been winning games. We're doing the best we can. I mean, we have guys pulled from games right before they start, so it makes it very difficult to handicap, especially with a program like this that we typically put out 3 hours before game time. But let's go USA. I've always been a fan. My patriotism have never wavered, and I'm looking forward to the day when I can finally get back on an airplane and travel somewhere. So it's good to have you here. I'm glad that we've been able to do this for ourselves and for the fans of gambling, and I think that 2021 is going to end on a much higher note than it began.
Well, I mean, we do have important jobs here. We are talking about wagering, we're talking about sports, and we're talking about dollars. So if you rank it, we're right below the pandemic. So as far as the importance of it, so we appreciate everybody on Facebook Live and downloading and subscribing. Hopefully we've given you something over the last year. And I'm just looking forward to going forward. 500,000 seconds, just a little bit lower than the number of people that have lost their lives, 550,000 people in the last year. So stay vigilant, stay positive, test negative, and continue to do the right things as we get through this, the pandemic, the Spanish flu. We got through it then. We got through everything. That was a 2-year period. Hopefully by this time next year with all the vaccinations and everything, whatever you believe in, just stay vigilant and respect other people's rights. That's all we've said the whole time. But we are an important show, and we are an part. We're right below the vaccinations and science, but we're right there. All right, that's all we're going to do for that. Let's get to Casey's picks here. Charlie has no picks today, so let's get to Casey's picks as we enjoy the second half of the 57 games today in conference tournament basketball.
Yeah, exactly. Real quick, though, I know I mentioned it. We're going to talk a little NBA. I wanted to throw this in. If you're going to be betting tonight on that Nets versus Celtics game, Smart is back for Boston. Durant will be out again. And it looks like Blake Griffin is not going to suit up tonight. So if you're going to be wagering on that game, keep it in mind as Brooklyn sits here as a 2.5-point favorite. The nightcap tonight out west, Suns and Blazers. It looks like Devin Booker, he's questionable right now, but I was just reading Arizona Central. It looks like he's not going to play tonight. That certainly better affect you if you're going to be deciding to take 4.5 points with a team that could be missing their best player.
And by the way, CJ McCollum's coming back tonight too. I had heard, not sure if he's going to come back or not, but CJ McCollum might be back. So that might right there might make your difference as far as getting an underdog. They got to play defense though. Phoenix has played great defense this year.
It's true. All right. So 17-3, my last 20. I was 17-2 before this morning because I rode with my stalwart Michigan State, which isn't on the board because the game's over and I already lost a bunch of money on it. I've got a couple of plays though, actually 3 plays left. I will ride with Oklahoma again, 3.5 at William Hill right now against Kansas. I think they win that game outright and move on. I think Connecticut is in a great position tonight. They've got a very beatable squad on their schedule, and I think that DePaul is just going to get annihilated. In fact, that number is moving around. I still see it at Win FanDuel at 12.5. William Hill's moved it all the way up to 13.5. So hop in on that. Oklahoma plus 3.5, UConn minus 12.5. And I'm going back to the well. 6-point teaser, baby. You know I love them. I live for them. Give me Oklahoma getting 9.5 points against Kansas tonight, along with the New York Knicks getting 16.5 points in Milwaukee against the Bucks. Not saying they're going to win outright, but they're not going to lose by 17 points. So there are my plays for the day. Oklahoma, UConn, then a 6-point teaser, Oklahoma and the New York Knicks.
San Diego State leads Wyoming 67-64 with 7 seconds left. Seton Hall St. John's tied with 10 seconds left at 62. The MAC championship, Buffalo, the quarterfinal, Buffalo, Miami, Ohio is there too. But those are the only 2 games left of consequences. Wyoming, San Diego State. That could be a big loss for San Diego State. Seton Hall St. John's tied. Looks like they're going to go to overtime. As far as the NBA goes, I'm really intrigued by the Charlotte Hornets in the East. They're laying 4.5 to Detroit. I'm going to take them tonight. No Joel Embiid, no Ben Simmons for the Philadelphia 76ers. They're still under protocol. The Chicago Bulls at -3.5. I would like to take the under on that game, but I'm not sure because Chicago can score, and without Embiid and Simmons, their defense is very lacking, and I don't trust Chicago's offense or Philadelphia's offense without that. So give me the Bulls -3.5. They did cover against them with Embiid early in the year. I don't know how the Knicks are 10.5-point underdogs to the Milwaukee Bucks. Their defense is pretty good. But I'm gonna stay away from that game. So and then I take the Clippers tonight, -7.5 over the Golden State Warriors as they come back. Not sure if Wiseman's going to play tonight. Not that makes a difference. Clippers at home have been playing well all year. And then in college, I didn't write the college ones down, so you're gonna have to bear with me here for a second. I'm gonna go with Boise State -4.5 over Nevada. That game starts in a half an hour on the Mountain West Championship quarterfinal there. I'm going to take Butler +10.5 against Creighton. That'll start at 6 o'clock. And then tonight, I am going to go with North Carolina. They're red hot right now. They played really well. They're going to lay 3.5 to Virginia Tech. I'm going to go with them over Virginia Tech -3.5. And then I'm going to go with USC -7.5 over Utah in the Pac-12 tournament. Anything else that's there? Texas Tech. I'm going to take Colorado State. Late game tonight. Colorado State -8.5 over Fresno State as well. So that's going to do it. Those are the picks. I know we said you got to look at the underdogs with everybody there, and here I go with 5 favorites. So we'll see how I am tomorrow at 4:15 on Facebook Live. We're going to have Daniel Lust on, our sports attorney, is going to be on tomorrow at 4:15 with us. We're going to talk contracts. We'll talk legal. We'll talk about his action on NCAA games, and he's a big San Francisco Giants fan. So we may sneak one question in there on what he thinks about the Giants this year as well too. Casey Freelove, Charlie O on assignment. I'm Basti Battaparty. You can download and subscribe anywhere on Apple, iHeart, Spotify, or subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. You can catch us on Facebook Live on my page, the Stables Media Facebook page, Stables Media YouTube. Pass it along. Tell your friends about it as well, too. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great afternoon. Good luck with all your games. That's the Make the Money and Run podcast for March 11th, 2021. Happy unanniversary to the pandemic. Let's go forward and test negative. Have a great afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow at 4:15. Take care.